Hey everyone, this is Julia L. Powell. I'm going to do a demo of how I painted these floral paintings. I'm going to use the technique I originally used on this, but I've gotten some newer techniques that I want to try for other paintings, but for now I want to show you how I did this one. So this is what I did back in 2016 called Trillium, which is one of my favorite wildflowers, mainly because I'm very fond of the science teacher who took us down to a park in our local town where we would hike, and he would point out the different plants and teach us about, the seasons, what was growing. But not only that, but that particular park was also well known for being a haven for this rather rare wildflower. All right, so that is the original painting. So what this actually is I start out with a piece of illustration board. This is done, what did I do this on? This is done on crescent board. I've since moved to Strathmore, which is a much more thick, velvety, sturdy surface. But this worked beautifully for these, because I didn't need it to absorb quite so much. I really wanted the gouache to sit on top. So it's on an illustration board. The original drawing is done in brown colored pencil, which actually acts a little bit like a wax resist to the water-based paints. Now, gouache will just about cover anything, but it did kind of avoid the pencil lines a good bit, so you can still see them. I didn't have to go back over the painting to put those in. Then, after I did the original drawing in the brown pencil, I washed the whole thing in watercolor to set a tone, to set a color to make the flowers pop up against. So I really like using complementary colors to whatever the main color of the flower itself is. After doing the watercolor wash, I let it dry, though that wasn't always necessary because this is built up in layers. But letting it dry lets it set, give me a good idea if I've gotten it dark enough, and that way I have a better judgment of where it's going. Then, after that, that's when I get into actually painting the flower. And because gouache is opaque, I will basically start with the base colors. So like for the leaves, the base color is actually the dark green, and I just went lighter and lighter and lighter because that's one of the magical things that gouache will let me do. And of course with the flowers, I'm not sure what I did here. I'm pretty sure I might have started with that pale purple, worked it up, and then kept going back and forth until I got the shaping that I wanted. And then after that, it was just a matter of the detailing. Filling in these little blossoms down here, the stamens, all of those pieces. So I'm going to be doing, by request, a Western fairy slipper. And this isn't going to be as involved as one of these. These actually took a long time to compose. I'm going to be composing on the fly here, just so we can get the technique down. I've already marked out very, very, very lightly in 9H pencil the square area that I want to work in. So it's going to be about 8 inches. And then I'm going to kind of freehand this. But first, what I'm going to do is I have printed out reference. Now, I've stopped actually doing that and been using my phone for reference, but since I'm recording on the phone, I needed to print it out. Now, I've noticed here that there are actually different species. I actually ended up with 3 different species. I have 1, 2, 3. These are also apparently known as calypso orchids. But what I'm going to do is pick one species and then use the pose from the other species to base the poses for the one that I like on. Now this one I particularly like. It's got a really bright yellow, it's more pink, but the shape is really nice, and it's a much nicer shape in general. But also looking at these other poses, I can see, just how to shape this and then add in the pieces. So on this I would simply add that yellow, I would not paint these spots, and then the little beards underneath, I would make them yellow. And that's a good idea because what I've got here are actually professional copyrighted photographs. So I'm really just using these as initial reference, but I do need to change it up. I have to make these different. These, I can't draw exactly this shape. And that's why I have multiples. So what I'll do is I'll probably go and look at these and say, okay, that's how those are flopping over. How many petals are there? And work on it that way. And I would spend a lot more time setting up this sketch and making sure it's good and then actually transferring it to the board. But I'm not going to do that for today. So the other thing that I need to do is look at the other pieces. So there's the leaves. So I want these leaf shapes, and what I can do is suggest them in the background. Also, these have incredible stems, and I'm not sure, see, this one doesn't seem to have other, you know, buds hanging down, so these look like more singular flowers. So that may be what I'll go with, but I really want to show off the bloom itself, so that'll be the main shape within the frame here, is, you know, I want to have it like at least 3 of them in here. Yeah, of course I had to pick something that was detailed. But we'll go pretty fast on this, because I think I only want to keep this to an hour. All right, so that's basically the idea. These are really just as reference points. I'm not going to be copying them exactly. I do want to, you know, try and get as elegant a shape as I can. Bear with me because usually, like I said, I spend more time drawing this, have it drawn out, and then I transfer it to the board, but I'm going straight to the board today. I don't want to start with a colored pencil right off the bat. I'm going to start with a very pale 9H pencil because I just want to get shapes in here first. So I'm going to start with some of the leaf shapes, you know, and see, you know, take them out of the frame a bit. And now you're not really going to be able to see these lines. I don't want you to. Not because I don't want you to know what my magical secrets are. I don't want you to see them because I want them to disappear in the watercolor. Right now they're just there to guide me into what I need to do for the shapes. And I'm one of those people that I really have a tough time talking while I'm drawing. Yep, there goes my ability to talk. So this is just giving me a place to start. Alright, there's 1, 2, and since they seem to all point in the same direction, I'm, you know, being compositionally, taking liberties compositionally, but I think we'll do that. Yeah, so these are actually kind of forming a triangle. This one's going to have a yellow spot that's going to be in the upper third. So I'm basically kind of following some of the rules of composition, you know, using lines to draw the eye in. Trying to tilt the angles a little bit differently. Alright, I'm pretty happy with what I sketched in there. So you can barely see it's very, very pale in there, which is what I want. And now I'm going to come in with the colored pencil and start actually drawing in the shapes. So, okay, so now, you know, again, if I had my phone, you know, up and running, I would be able to just flip these and know where I was going. But I'm just going to guess for now. So I'm just kind of gently roughing it in. And then what I'll do is I'll go back and make these lines much stronger so there's actually a lot of wax on the paper. And I'm actually trying to draw, I'm drawing this flower backwards. Yeah. Let's see how hard I can make this on myself. Okay. That's going to come up. I mean, this is still not really making it completely original, but it is making it more compositionally where I want it to be. Okay, so there's that. So I'm going to kind of change the shape of these a little. Alright, so I see that that one's twisting around, so I'm going to give it a little twist. And then it's got another one behind it. It's also twisting. It looks like there was one popping out over here, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say no. I'm going to put you over here. Alright, so these all seem to want to twist around when this bloomed. Alright, and then there's the neck coming off of it, which I'm going to kind of... So what I'm going for here is just plausibility. It's quite plausible that this bloomed that way. Alright, now I've got a bit of a tangent here, so I'm going to kind of fix that a little. So that's why I do the sketch ahead of time, because that's what'll happen, is I'll get tangents because I wanted to follow this particular line. And then, see, I don't want to erase too much because this will mess up my surface. But I can erase a little bit. And again, you know, gouache is this amazing, wonderful, fantastic paint. And a lot of people get frustrated with it because they don't buy good gouache. You gotta buy good gouache. That is one of the paints that you really do have to buy good quality. Because the other ones, you know, cheaper gouaches are just full of chalky, you know, whatever. Just to, you know, to give you the opacity that you're expecting, but then it kills all the colors. Okay, so there's that one. Now I'm going to use this bottom middle picture and get that one in there. And I just noticed that that is actually cupping. Alright, so that's cupping. And this is... because these actually all have very similar shapes to them. And I forgot the beards on here. Well, I'm calling it beards, but, you know, I'm not a botanist. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's cringing like, no, that's not what that's called! Well, you know, it's more of a... I need to name things as I'm drawing to some extent, but it's more like, okay, that's what my brain understands, that's what it's going to call it. I should really look at a book. Okay. So I like shapes that cross each other, so I'm good with that, crossing that. This is going to end up having the stem crossing over there. And I want to cross there, but I don't want to cross there. Okay, so I got that in. And again, I'm being kind of sketchy. And not being exact. I'm just following along with what's being told to me by this photo. Okay, so now this one was the different species than this one. Now I could leave it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, not at all. Alright, I'm just judging that a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But for this one, because of color and composition, I'm going to make it the same. Alright, so all I wanted was the shape. Okay, and then I have this third one that I want to draw down here. And I think I'm just going to use the original one that I had here. This one I think is, I'm going to leave it as the biggest one, so I may push this one a little bit more into the background. Um, oh, there goes my inability to keep my mouth going. Okay. So I'm letting this one. Let's see, let's do that. A little more variety. Because I just noticed these petals are all kind of a different shape too, so. And in a way, by overlapping like this, I'm kind of putting them all in the same space. So they're in the same world. Alright, and then there's your stem. I'm going to give that curl because that's going to hug it. Okay, that's pretty basic. And now I'm just going to be suggesting the leaves in the background because the leaves are not actually in this part of the flower. So this is going to be more just abstract shape. In the background. Alright, actually I want to tilt that more. Again, it's okay if I have these little mistakes. I have a little story that I can tell from one of my experiences with the illustration masterclass, which was just a life-changing group of artists that, you know, taught me so much. Not just about how to paint, though they did teach me that, you know, but also how to think like an artist, how to live like an artist. But one of the most important lessons was you know, by Boris Vallejo, who is a sweet, wonderful person. I was very lucky to have gotten a chance to study with him. He came up one time and I was sitting next to a wonderful friend of mine, Chris Galen. Hey, Chris, I hopefully get to see this. Who was very upset because he had a blotch on his painting, and he was incredibly upset about that. And so Boris was like, "Hey, how's everything going?" And Chris was like, "Oh, what do you do when this happens?" And Boris just kind of shrugged and smiled and says, "Oh, look at that." And I keep painting. And we just started laughing because really, I mean, what else are you going to do? Because we were both being so precious with what we were doing that, you know, we tightened up, we couldn't think, you know, all of that. And here's Boris. He's like, "Oh, look at that." And, you know, just keep painting. And that was one of the wisest things that I learned about art making is don't get so precious about it. You know, trust in your skill. Look at accidents as happy accidents. I mean, Bob Ross only taught us that how many times, but I have a tendency to fall asleep when I watch Bob Ross because he's so freaking relaxing. I love Bob Ross. So, yes, I can chatter away when I'm tracing because I don't have to think about where I'm going. So, right now I'm just getting the lines nice and thick. And I know this is not entirely accurate, but again, right now, you know, I didn't really plan this out ahead of time. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants here. Alright. And you can see how thick the pencil is going on right now. But because I've got a nice line already put down, I can just follow along and get as dark as I want to on it. And these lines are thick. I wanted this to be graphic, as in graphic design. And, you know, and I love the almost stained glass look of this. And I love using the brown. I've always been a fan of sepia lines over black lines. Okay, I'm trying, and here I'm talking about being precious with my work, and I'm being all precious here. Now I am going pretty fast. I would take a lot more care with this. Sorry, I'm kicking the camera. I'm actually like got the camera right up on my forehead here, so it's kind of like ah. There we go. So you can always tell when I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna make a decision here because I stopped talking. I'm gonna push that in the back instead of to the front. And this one was fun because it was just so organic as it was. Now, I will admit, I don't talk at all when I'm working without an audience. And see, I'm not going to worry about that line. Just not going to worry about it. Because eventually, you know, if I make the gouache thick enough, it'll cover that. It's not a problem. Again, I'm going very fast here because I want you to see every step. Okay, now I have to remember this is in front. And then finish this shape. Okay, now that pencil has gotten pretty dull, but that's why you sharpen a whole bunch of them. Of course, now this one's just a little. Oop, that helped. That's what I needed. Thank you for breaking. So a lot of people think that drawing is totally in your hands, and it's not. I don't have muscle memory on how to draw straight lines or any of that. It is entirely my eye that is doing it. My hands just kind of like, just tell me where to go. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the book Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. But that was very instrumental in my early learning about how to draw. And one of the most important exercises in that book was blind contour. And it really just worked so well on training your eye and your hand to follow together. See, I've already learned the shapes of these and how they work, so I'm able to just add detail because I already know what's supposed to go there. Like, I didn't even sketch those pieces in. But I knew what to do with them, where they go. And I literally have only seen this flower for a few minutes before I started even doing this. Alright, that wandered off a bit, but that's not a problem. It's okay. Alright. I'm just going to make a decision here real quick on these background shapes, because I think I want this one to go on top now. Yeah, I like that better because it's this opposing line. And I'm pulling it off the edge. That's a bit of a wobble, but again, it's not going to be a big deal. That's another thing I love about gouache, is it hides all my sins. Okay, and then, so I'm giving this a bit of a curve, make it a little more interesting, because that's how the leaves actually behave. And then this one over here. And then this one over here. That was a bit of a not so good idea there. Yeah, that was not so hot either. Ah! See, again, these are the kind of things I wouldn't allow to happen with a real piece that I had sketched ahead of time. Because I would see that and I'd say, oh, nope, that's bad. You just heard me, kind of whining about it. And oh, no, I would fix that. So then I would slowly move everything, but I'm putting these lines down really heavy, so, we're going to leave that for now. Because it may not matter. Alright, so this is some fairly heavy pencil. I'm just going to go in and kind of clean up little bits and pieces so I have a little less to have to clean up later. Now, what's really interesting about this particular pencil, I'm using Derwent Color Soft. Oh, do I have a longer one here so you can see the whole? So it's Derwent Color Soft. And interestingly enough, it slightly dissolves in water. It's not advertised as a watercolor pencil, but it will behave as such. So what you'll see is when I start to apply the watercolor is it's going to start to soften. And that's okay. It was a happy accident. Okay, so, that was fairly quick. And the reason why I'm able to do this quickly is, well, first off, I did how many of those flower paintings. But it's also just understanding the basic ideas of composition, of shape, of variety, and also understanding how to be consistent with the shapes. So, not to belabor the point. Now, these are, pinkish, purplish with yellow, and I find that, lime green will really set that off because, as you can see, they stand out beautifully against a green background. So I'm going to go like a very yellowish green. This is one of my favorite colors. And kind of wetting this up, but I'm also going to spray this with water so that I can get the watercolor to blend more. So I'm off onto the side here, mixing everything. Now, shoot, because I have this camera kind of tied down, or I would show you this palette. Yeah, there's no easy way to pick this thing up, but all right, I'm dropping things. Well, let me see. Hold on, I can pick it up there. I don't have a whole lot of water in it. This monstrous, beautiful thing, and I don't want to spill the water, because I just filled up one of these colors with a whole bunch of water. This thing is a palette, and this is one of the pieces to it, and it's made by a company called Robax.com, and I am utterly in love with them. These watercolor palettes, and I know that was a really, really quick glimpse, they come with cups that you can actually put into the wells so that you can totally customize your palette, what order your colors come in. You can change it up if you need to. Oh, this isn't spraying as well as it used to. Now, I don't know if you can, nah, you're not going to be able to see it, but I can see it. You might be able to see it a little bit, is I'm spraying this with water, and the water is resisting away from the colored pencil, and which is great. All right, so I'm just letting that go. Another essential tool. I fell in love with these cotton flannel towels. They're cotton flannel paper towels. I really should start asking for commission because I'm recommending all these brands and stuff that, But I found these online. I absolutely love them. They're so, and every time you wash them, they become softer and softer and more absorbent. So I horked a bunch of them for my watercolor station, so that I can reuse them. I do love the paper towels, but enough is enough. I gotta stop throwing that stuff away. I don't know why my spray is not spraying so good. So I'm just really trying to get this nice and damp, but I don't want it, you know, pooling like crazy. But I want it just enough to let the watercolor spread. And then I'm going to drop other colors into it, you know, just to give it variety. And that's the whole point to it. So I'm just going to randomly add it. Random. Gotta make it random. Oh, gosh, guys, I need a social life again. I'm sure you all can understand. Let's see. Oh, we're already up to a half an hour. But you know what, I'm not going to complete the thing, but at least you will see how this works. So you can see this lime green is actually starting to pick up some of the brown from the colored pencil. And that's okay. I want it to have some variation. But the other thing I'm noticing with this lime green is it doesn't have a whole lot of variation within itself. So, I've placed that. I'm thinking, I'm going to push it. Where do I want to push it? What direction do I want to? Well, let's push it a little darker green. So I have a more bluish, darker green. Oh, actually, I think it's turquoise. I just kind of randomly sprayed some of these because they're closely related enough. All right, so I'm wetting that up, and then I'm gonna think about where I want to put that. So I think I'm gonna bring it in here because I want to set the flowers off. You see how I'm just going over the flowers too? It's okay. Because I want those flowers to pop, and one of the best ways to make them pop is to paint the opposite underneath them. Alright, so I want this drippier. I'm gonna see what happens up here. Alright, yeah, you can see you're getting some nice drips and things. Now I'm just getting water and bringing it across. Letting it see what happens. Letting it drip. I mean, this is the extent of my real watercolor skills. I'm not a terribly skilled watercolorist, but I just love using it for backgrounds. For, you know, adding color. Because I hate painting directly on white. Never did like it. Okay. So we're looking good. Oh, I really like that. Pull that out a little bit. That started to dry, so you can see there's a hard edge. Alright. Alright, so now I can see that's going to start dripping off the edge there. Boop. Boop. Just keep booping it until it stops. And it's okay. I like that little blop on the edge. Let's see. That works. Now, I mean, I've got my little corners here that are telling me where things are going, but that's okay. It's okay if I go over. I'm good with it. Alright. So I'm going to let that dry just a little bit while I start mixing up my gouaches. But I wanted to talk more about the Robax palettes, because let me tell you, I want this company to keep putting this stuff out. Because not only do they do these gorgeous watercolor palettes, they have all different shapes. They've got rectangular ones, circular ones, they've got little travel ones. This is a mixing tray that sits in the middle of that palette. It has a cover, and what's even nicer about it is it has a carousel. You know, so it'll spin around. So you're not trying to reach across. I have one of those large square watercolor palettes, which I do love. It's sitting underneath this one. But I have to reach all the time. This one, I can just spin it around to the color that I want. I had my paintbrush. What did I do with it? Oh, I washed it and put it away. Like, that's just nuts. Because I'm not going to use that big brush anymore. Okay, and I need to get some water in all of this paint. Now, I keep a very basic palette of gouache sitting out. You know, and this was just ready to go whenever I need it. And since this is just a quick thing, I wasn't going to have to use the big palette. You really should squirt clean water into your colors, which I am not doing right now. They all have a slight tint of lime green. But with the gouache, it doesn't really matter. I know I'm a little bit sloppy that way, but sometimes I'm extremely picky. It just depends on what I'm working on. And this is kind of a quick and dirty project here. But you can see, like, I've already got a pretty nice result. You know, it's already looking interesting. It's you know, you want to see where this is going to go. You got some bright color, a rich color, and it's already, you know, starting to do something. All right, I got my water in there now. I'm going to leave the background for last because that's the least interesting part. The most interesting part, obviously, is the flowers. That's no big deal that I dotted that, but still, I still need this to dry a little bit more. I'd like to use the hairdryer, but it's super loud on video. Don't really know how to turn the sound off to do that. Well, you know what? This is a time problem. Sorry for the loudness. I'm going to use it. Yes, this is from the 80s. I stopped drying my hair so long ago. This just ended up in my art supplies. But this is authentic 1980s Vidal Sassoon. This is probably from, oh, good God. I don't know, like 1986? But since it's used so little, this thing is like, look at the teal blue. I mean, come on, teal. It's so 80s. Anyway, I'm gonna just real quick dry. All right, that's enough. Freaks the dog out too. Yes, I just got I'm very displeased with that noise sigh over there. Alright, so let's start with... Alright, I keep a brush around that I use just for mixing, because I've already destroyed the tip on it. It's always a good idea to keep a brush for just mixing and activating paint. Because you don't want your good brushes to lose their shape and to get mashed up and everything. Alright, there's this rather lovely pale pink already on here. Oh, I need my reference. You can see this board is curling up pretty good, but I just tend to hold it down. I'm not terribly concerned that it's doing that. Alright, so I need to get a lot more of this pink. This is the boring bit, is trying to mix the color and just get it down. I probably should have activated these a bit sooner. But again, a nice thing about gouache is it just acts just like watercolor. It's just opaque. So I keep, as you saw, lumps of color in a palette at all times. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and use this paler color because it's going to help cover up a bit what's underneath. So, ooh, that's actually my mixing brush. Never mind. Get a regular painting brush. Now I like to use, because I'm doing flowers, I like to use a pointier brush. There it is. Alright, so this is a filbert. I really love filberts because it gives me both, it gives me 3 different options. I can do a thin line on the edge. I can get that nice round tip that fits beautifully into these round shapes. And then, I can also just, do a lot of fill-in with it. Okay, so, looking at my reference, this is going to be pink. So I'm really just putting in a base color. It's going to take several layers. And as you can see, it's soaking into that wonderful velvet surface. This is also fairly thin. So, I like my gouache to be fairly liquid. But this is just going to lay down a base. That I can then go in and paint detail. I can take it darker, I can take it lighter, but this is a nice middle tone. You know, so that green is kind of showing through just a little bit. Ooh, I did not mix enough. So hopefully I can mix more of the same tone, but it's really not that important. I can get close, I can paint over it. And in a way, I've almost created like my own, you know, color by number. All right, yellows tend to be pretty translucent. But sometimes if you paint it thick enough, so I'm going to put a nice yellow base for these fuzzy bits. And these fuzzy bits are definitely going to take a couple of layers because there's dimension, there's depth. They're more orange in the center. This bleeds down a little bit. There's going to be an interesting piece. When I made this choice about green, I just noticed this detail. These lines within the flower body are actually greenish. So what's going to be fun is, instead of painting all of this opaque, I'm just going to go in there and just paint thin lines of yellow. And that's going to really help it look, you know, translucent. Like you are seeing the background because the background is right there. Again, I'm not terribly concerned that I'm going over lines. I really didn't want to go too much into the perfectionist direction with this. With, you know, in general. I mean, when I started doing this, I wanted it to be a little bit more organic. All right, so like looking at this, so I'm just gonna paint. I'll probably go back over these again later because it does look like they're a little more whitish. And there's going to be a pink blush over it at some point. But already you can see that flower starting to come together. All right. Now I'm going to need some white. Sorry, I hit the... I don't know if I set this thing back on here right. Yeah, sometimes it takes a little to get the paint to head up to the thickness that you want. It's going to take a little while. The more the water soaks in, the better. But that's okay. It's okay if this is a little thin right now because I'm going to want to put other color in. Like this definitely has some blushing going on, so I'll probably end up lightly blushing it later. There's different ways to do that. So you can see, and gouache, this is another nice thing about gouache is, all right, so I've got this like soft edge, but I can just go back in with water and just bleed it out. And that's one of the nice things about gouache. You know, it does just about everything. It's just awesome. I just freaking love it. There's some very yellow tips down at the bottom, so... And again, right now, I'm just doing my color hints. Just saying, okay, that's what this is going to be. And then I'm going to go back in. Now, you guys are looking at this like, how the heck do you know where this is going to go? But believe it or not, I can actually visualize this. I can see where the pinks are going to be. You know, I can see them pretty clearly. And, you know, but that's just from years and years and years of doing this stuff. You know, you visualize it ahead of time. You know, you kind of dream about your painting and what it's going to look like. It never turns out exactly the way you want it, but, you know, it's nice to dream. It's nice to hope. I may have to squeeze out some fresh paint because this is taking a long time to do. Yeah, so unfortunately I'm not doing this live, so I can't really take questions while I'm sitting here cajoling my paint to loosen up. Because I really need to mix a lot of pink. But you know what, when we play this, I'll be online with you while you're watching. Let's see, I only got about 15 more minutes here. So I'm gonna kind of speed this up a bit. You know, the next time I do a demo, I'm going to remember to, like, pre-mix stuff. I mean, other people planned better. I'm not working with hot glass, so I'm like, oh, this will be no problem. Alright, so trying to think what else to suggest on something like this. I mean, this was something like... So one of the things is that I do with this is I kind of set up little rules ahead of time. Like, with this set, I had little rules of how I was going to do this. You know, I wanted patterns in the background. I didn't put a frame on this like I put on the other ones, but I wanted all the parts to be made up of the parts of the flowers themselves. I think the one thing I didn't really use was the roots. And I'm sure, I mean, roots look like roots, so there really weren't like a fantastic solution for compositional reasons. And after having spent a couple of days doing a clipping path on a mandrake root, I never, ever, ever want to look at roots again. That was one of the most hideous things I've ever had to do for a job. Alright. I'm just trying to get this pink up to a richer color. Right now it's still very white. And I've added just a touch of purple to this pink. I think this is rose. I'm not sure what it is. Because that's the other nice thing about that other palette is all of those little cups that I have in there are all labeled. So I know exactly what's in them. You know, so when I need to refill, I can refill. Oh, and the other thing that Robax makes is colored pencil trays. And they are stacking trays that go backwards like stairs. And I have 2 sets of them. So I have all my colored pencils are actually out, and you can see every single one of them, and oh, it's amazing. It looks so impressive, and it is so easy to work with. Alright, so I've got all this pink. And I'm just going to work on one flower for now. Yeah, so you can see it's a slightly different color than the other one I was using, because I don't really know what was in that. It was just some leftover paint. Not a problem. You know, I think I can probably afford to add some more purple in there. See, this is nice. I'm being not incredibly neat about this. Because, like I said, the color pencil is acting a bit like a wax resist. So it's kind of keeping my paint in the lines. Oh, dang it. I'm wondering why this is acting so weird. It's my mixing brush. Durr. See, that's just it. Even like the crappiest brushes, if you know what you're doing, you know the shape of it, you know, you can paint with just about anything. It took me a long time to realize that. I was Little Miss. I have to have perfect supplies. They must be perfect. You know, and like realizing that drawing really isn't in your hands. I mean, there are people that draw the most amazing things, you know, holding a tool in their mouth. Because it really is your eye. I mean, yes, you have all of this feedback between you and your hand, but it's really your eye. And how it's connected to your hand. I was going to finish that sentence eventually. Okay. And the nice thing is this does dry pretty quickly. It's so neat, like when it pools, especially with the yellow. I don't know what it is with the yellow. There's something in it where when it pools, it actually gets kind of shiny, so it looks even cooler. See, now I'm just going to go back over this. It's a big shape. It kind of sunk into the green a little bit because it was still a little wet. But now, you're not going to know that I had a different color purple under there. Because gouache hides everything! If I could make pants out of gouache, I would. Okay. So I got the base color down on that flower. And I'm seeing some places to blush. I'm just going to push that in there for now. This is actually blushing. I'm going to go back in to my water. Just soften that right. Oop. And this is where the artist uses their pants. And I'm just going to soften that in there. Because it blushed. And there's a little blush there. So that's a bit of a subtlety that I'm going to have in here. And yeah. And this is it. It's kind of neat. You can just keep pushing it around. All right, and that yellow has this brilliant orange center. So I'm going to bring that in there. You know what? It kind of died on me there. You see how dark that is? We want that to be bright. So I'm going to add a bit of white to that just to give it some more opacity and brightness. Because again, like not all gouache is totally opaque, and that's what happened there. Is the yellows and the pale or the lighter oranges, you know, a lot of the greens are very transparent. So you really have to juice them up with a little bit of white. But I don't want to do too much because I don't want it to go chalky. So let's see how that turned out. Yep, that kind of did what I wanted it to. And you can see like the yellow is dying against it, but you know what? There's going to go more yellow on that because I want this orange center. I'm going to give that a little kick of this. I'm not really paying attention to shadows so much because again, this was more about graphic representation. These stems are kind of like a purplish brown. So I am going to keep them purple, but I'll probably add something else to it. But for now, I'm going to do a very thin pink and let the green show through, and that may very well take care of it. Because as we know, those of us that mix color, pink and green make baby poop. And believe it or not, it's giving me the value I need to make the stem stand out. Isn't that nice? That looks stemmy, you know, because the green is showing through. But I'm still going to kind of give it a boost with a tiny bit of brown. Oop, that's a bit bright. See, there's no reason to freak out, so it's a bit dark. It's gouache! I get to move it around. And it's not going to stay there. Now, if you're using acryla, or acryla, I don't really know how it's pronounced. It's one of those things that I've seen it written, never heard anybody actually say it. Oh, this brown is really powerful, so I'm trying to just get a touch of it. Yeah, see, I've got that pink in there. You can kind of see the green through it, but it's got the value I need. Since I've never heard it said, but anyway, it's got acrylic in it, so it will go down and pretty much stay as permanently as acrylic does. And that's something I want to avoid, so I never use it. It's wonderful if you want like a more permanent paint that stays in place, but you want real opacity, and that's where acrylic is just beautiful. But I'm really enjoying the ability to move my paint around. All right, so I've mixed my paler yellow with white, and I'm going in and giving it the edges on this. and lighting this up. All right, so I don't really like what happened there, but that's okay. I can go back and fix it. All right, and just to give it some dimension, I'm giving it... You see how fast that is? All of a sudden, that blob of color is just really standing out. Let's see. Ooh, really only got about 5 more minutes here, but well, we can go a little bit longer. I don't have to stop. This isn't live. This isn't live. It's not Memorex. I know it's going to be a bit of a long one, but you know what the heck. I was going to lighten this pink. I want a lighter pink. I'm not really shading so much as creating form. Because this is not a real space. This is not a reality space. This is composition. This is just getting plausibility. Okay, so see how I just let that brush make that shape? That's it. I'm just placing it. Okay. Not going to do too much more to it. I'll do it again. Let's see. So on these little bits that turn, that's the other reason why I like these filberts, is they kind of act like calligraphy brushes. Alright, and then this one is, look at that, just so quick. I love how that works. Alright. Okay. So I like where that went. Okay. That's all I'm after is making form. Alright, and so now I'm just looking at colors and color shapes. So these little windows are quite pink. So I'm going to give them pink. This is where I saw that blushing in the back. So I'm going to blush it because I like the effect. And let's see, we need some more white. So I'm going to run that along this edge. Still using the same brush. I've been using the same brush the whole time. Brighter white. It's going around the edge. This is white. All right. Now, let's see. Now, see, I don't like what happened here, but what I'll end up doing is waiting for this to dry and then going back in there with that colored pencil. Now, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm going to give it a shot because there's so much richness in that pink color on this flower. And I'm kind of losing it with that middle tone. So I'm going to see how dark I can go. Because I don't want to use the pure color because it's like really dark. Alright, so I'm going to hit the underneath. Hit the underneath. This one I'm going to hit. Now, I knew that was wet. So I'm good with that blending. I'm going to take a little bit of that wetness, blend it there. Okay. Again, that's another little spot that I'm kind of concerned about is right there. But I'll just hit it with the colored pencil when I'm done. But you can see this is, I mean, it's not simple. I'm making decisions. I know what I want to happen. This is all of a sudden just kind of hitting an ugly stage all of a sudden. All of a sudden twice. But that's okay. It just means it's not finished. Alright. That's, give you a little bit more richness. Give this edge a little bit more. Okay. Now, I need my middle tone, because I don't like how that dark just went so dark. I mean, it's brilliant, and it should be brilliant. It was just a bit too much. So I'm putting some more of the mid-tone in. Kind of fine with how that is. Alright, and then with a damp brush, I'm creating striations. That's it. Those striations are there. I'm just using them to blend these bits of color together. Okay. I really, really like where this is going. There's going to be a lot more work involved. One of the things that I'm noticing, like, you don't really see this. It's popping color-wise, but it's not popping value-wise. So I'm going to take a bit of gouache and a darker green. I'm going to test it out. Is this going to work? If it doesn't work, I can just go in and paint over it again. But the gouache is going to act like watercolor once you get it thin enough. So I'm kind of moving that around in there. I don't think that was really the best decision on that spot, but I'm going to push this. Push this. I mean, those are supposed to be the leaves anyway. Push this one. See what happens. Nice thing. The neat thing about having this camera going is I can just lean back and go, hey, yeah, that's working. You know, usually I have to get up and walk across the room. This is a really good idea. Okay. And then I'm going to come up along the stem with some of this. I have a feeling this was a phthalo. That ain't coming out. Oh, phthalo. You never leave me. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to encourage it to spread. But you can see that really stained the board right there. Like, you can see the marks from the brush and where it just immediately started to dry. Not a problem. Other gouache can go in there and fade it back out. But that was not necessarily a bad decision. Now, what I can do... Alright, so I'm looking at the photo. I'm noticing that I made a dark edge right here. But in the photo, I can see that this is kind of light. It's the translucence of the flower petal is actually going to go paler over there. So I can test that out. See, how's that going to look? Just a little. Now again, I probably would have planned a little differently on this. you know, sat with it for a while, designed where I wanted to go. Because right now I'm really just flying by the seat of my pants here. Now, I need those yellow striations to really show up. So I'm gonna... But this is what I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of back and forth decision making, going, okay, what doesn't look right? What needs to be fixed? All right, that was a bit thin, but I can build that up more. You know, it's talking to me. I'm listening, and it's saying, I want this. I want this. This needs to happen here. Yeah, that's better. And also, you know, it does change when it starts to dry. And that can be frustrating to deal with. But that really worked well. Yeah, it did. Yeah, I like that. I like how that happened. Yeah, and I'm not going totally with reality here. I'm really looking for form, but not necessarily total reality. Alright, I'm going to look at this. I want to get some striations in there. That was a bit much. But I don't mind it. It's okay. Get some striations in here again. Okay. Again, because once this dried here, it went dead. So this is why you have to do layers of color. You have to keep going back in until it behaves. So sometimes it almost gets dimensional, because I've built up so much to get that opacity, to stop letting that undercolor, you know, come up through. So there we go. Now it's back to being brilliant again. Now I may even go back in with the brown colored pencil and like some of these other paintings. In fact, I think I did it on this one. If you look very carefully, it's going to be hard to see through this plastic. But in this area, I went back in with a dark purple pencil and I did a bunch of hatching. Not sure if you can see it at all. You might be able to. But it didn't change the color much, but it did add a good bit of value. And that's what I'm probably going to end up having to do with this to make it work is go back in with colored pencil and add value. Or maybe I'll decide to completely change that background, make it light again. Don't know. I really wanted the flower to stand out. So, and that pink that I put down is actually not a high value color. It's not a, you know, like this, if you squint your eyes, this pink is almost the same value as this green. So it's really not standing out much. So my decision to go darker may not have been the wisest decision. You know, but we'll see. Again, I mean, this is going to take a couple of layers. Like, there's some striations I want in here. So in fact, you know, because that is a bit of a lighter area, you know, just... start getting them in there. Again, it doesn't totally have to be accurate. It just needs to be believable. Now some of these were even brighter back here. So I'm going to make them brighter. Why not? You know, that had a bit of a white. This is a bit lighter here. Okay. You know what? I'm going to lighten that up even more. You know, these... Oh, a bit much. That's okay. Get them brighter. Because again, this is more about design than it is about reality. And that's okay that that's still a little bit wet, because I can drag it around and get it to do stuff. All right. I'm actually liking this one so much, dang it, I'm gonna have to finish it. Alright. I don't care if they're not beards. I'm calling them beards. Oops. That was a bit of an oops. That's what towels are for. And see, ooh, look at that. I can just wash it right off. Because I'm being a spaz. Alright, I just want them to stand out. Alright, so this still has a lot of work to go, but that's really how these flower paintings, went. I mean, there's still going to be a lot of back and forth. So now that I've rendered this one, I have a map on how to render the other two. And then I still have a lot of decisions to make for these leaf shapes in the background. Am I going to keep this dark, or am I going to lighten it up? I'm probably going to keep it dark and still work on trying to get this edge to show up. Trying to get this a little more dimensional. To make it look more, more like it has form. And then go back in with the final color pencil texturing and see where we go from there. So thanks for joining me. I know this went a bit over an hour, but this was like from beginning to, partially finished. So this went quite a ways. Something like this, I'm probably looking, usually it took me about a full day to do one. And I'm talking like an 8-hour work day. And then this one also had a lot of little shapes, even though I went simple on the background. I didn't do a frame, like the other ones. And I also didn't plan this ahead of time, but it still came out great. So thanks again for joining me. If you do have any questions, put it in the comments when you're watching it, and I will do my best to get back to it. And enjoy. Take care, and thanks again.